And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sport. We do have a Springbok team announcement and a very interesting team announcement as well. As Rassie Erasmus currently in the press conference explaining some of the selections. But I'm going to put a bit of a poll, and we've got to get going here, people. We've got to really start. This is going to be a cool show. I can feel it coming. We need to really pick apart this and see where things are going to go with the box here. But for the first question is, do you like the Springbok 23 question mark? Yes or no? That's all you gotta do. Either yes or no. Very, very simple to answer. I don't want people sort of sitting on the fences and the likes of that. I need you guys letting me know what you think is going to happen. Where are we going with this team? And we're going to talk a little bit about what they've actually changed, to be honest, because there were a couple of things. There were four players basically that were set to play, and they basically now are not going to play because of the result last week. And you must be so miffed, shouldn't you? You know, you're in line to play. You're going to be involved in Cape Town, and then this team, if no other way of putting it, cocks it up for you, and all of a sudden you drop out of the team. So it looks like Morne van der Berg was set to play. Vincent Koch was sent to play. Somebody who else was talking about? Somebody else as well. So there were a couple of players who were set to play but have now not been included because of the result. So that's quite interesting in itself. But they've changed the team based on what happened last week. You know, they had an idea of who they wanted to play, but then they've had to now update things. And yeah, so this is now what the team we've got. And the big news is 6-2 split is back, and it's a nuke squad. I mean, jeepers, that bomb squad is proper. And I think that's what's probably so exciting. And he spoke about that, the fact, he said that at the end of the day, we kind of, his words were, we outsmarted ourselves with regards to, gassing themselves up too much. And they then said they're going to have to change things, bring in a 6-2 split, for example, try and navigate that and try and basically have a look at what went wrong with regards to gassing them out, and can they sort of change things up to try and prevent that from happening. So just sort of settling in. You've got to make sure that I'm on it for the press conference point of view, to make sure that I get to record of it. Ethan Hooker apparently was set to have a chance as well. And we will have the press conference up very, very shortly as well. So that's why I was a bit late, because we're busy sorting out press conferences and the likes of that. And now we can kind of get into the team, because I'm very excited to see what everybody has to say about this squad, because I think I like it. Look, I'm glad that there are a couple of new faces. I think that they are needed. I think we needed to have a proper look at what went wrong. I do think the 6-2 split being back is a really good move. I think that it looks like a good 6-2 split in itself. I think that's quite exciting, because it's one thing having a 6-2 split, it's another having a 6-2 split which can actually have the type of effect really that we wanted to have. But I do think that's a pretty good 6-2 split. I mean, anytime when you've got Inevan Etzebeth, Lodiaga, Kwaka Smith, Wilco Low coming off the bench with somebody like a Sash Famigama Zulu, it's exciting. It's really, really exciting. And I think that we've got a nice balance we still got a balance of new players. This is what also is quite cool. We still got a balance of young players. Martins van der Merwe, I absolutely love that selection. And I think that he's going to really put pressure on Bongi Manambi for that second hooker spot, because I think he's the real deal. So before I sort of go into your comments, and there's a lot of people to chat to, let's kind of break this down, shall we? So in the front row, we've got Oxen Chair, Malcolm Marks, Thomas du Toit. Now, Thomas du Toit, originally when we got the press releases and the information, was said to basically be on a 2-week break. Now, there was no sort of clarity on whether regards that was the 2-week matches, for example, or if that was the pre-camp and in the first game. The way that phrased it in the press release basically made it seem as if they weren't going to bring him in unless there was a need to. They're going to try and not use him for these games unless they really had to. That's obviously, if that is the case, changed, and they have brought him back. The main thing, though, I think somebody mentioned in the comments, tight head. Tight head. He's gone to Bath and he's been in the team of the season for the Premiership for the last 2 years, based on his performances at tight head. And he's now come back to the box squad, for example, and played mainly at loose head. And look, I mean, in open play, there's not always massive differences, but there are sort of small differences here and there. And I do think that he has become a pretty out and out tight head. And I like the fact that he's been then named at tight head, and that's where we're going to see him this weekend. Arcus Name and Rowan Nokia, I think this is a really good combination. I think we've got two high octane players. Both of them have got very good offload games. Arcus Neyman obviously has the physicality. Ruan Nokia's got the engine. I think they complement each other quite nicely. I think Ruan Nokia's got a tremendous skill set. Well, they both got tremendous skill sets, but I think, Ruan Nokia, for example, that whole midfield line out and the whole kind of thing, he's been quite central to that. So I like it as a combination, and they're also fresh. So we're going to have to be able to go out of a really good go at Wallabies pack, which has been highly used in the last couple of weeks. So it's going to be interesting to sort of see how those two really get going. And then I like the loose trio. I think it would have been a Markov Staden, Peter Steph, Toy, Jean-Luc Dupré. I think that was probably the loose trio they announced internally last week. Then Peter Steph Toy got the injury, and so they moved Franco Mostert. So what's really exciting is you've got Franco Mostert, Arcus Neyman, Eben Etzebeth, Lourdes Diago, all in the squad, as well as a Ruan Nokia. So we've actually got 5 kind of locks involved in the squad itself, which is quite exciting. And I think it's quite a cool way of doing it with regards to having some big bulky players, but also at the same time, your the locks that are involved are good, are mobile. Your Franco Mostert, your Ruan Nokias, they can play at flank, for example. So it's not like we've just got these. We know 5 Will Skeltons on the park, who is a tremendous player, but maybe not the most mobile around the pack. So it's a nice balance there. Franco Mostert's done the job before. Massive opportunity here for Jean-Luc Dupré. He's been around box squads. He's often called in when we've got injuries, and then he kind of never really gets the chance, and he kind of leaves the squad. So he finally gets a real good go in the number 8 jersey, where Rassie says in his words, there is no crisis. So interesting to sort of see that's how he kind of views it. He thought that Sia Khaleesi did very well in the number 8 jersey, and I think that in itself is quite an interesting indictment on him, because it's an interesting sort of think that he might actually become a genuine option at 8th man moving forward. Could see a Khaleesi. He's kept Grant Williams. Now, I wondered about if we might get Grant Williams off the bench. So in terms of how this has changed from the team that I predicted, I had Evan starting, and Archie on the bench. So my 23 is actually very similar to, by the way. The only players that I didn't have is I had Andre Esterhazen. I didn't have Luert, so those two were in. And I had Morne instead of Kobus. But apart from that, I've actually got, and Thomas for Asenati. But apart from that, I've actually got exactly the same 23 as to what I sort of predicted earlier. So, hey, to everyone saying I was completely wrong, it wasn't that wrong with regards to the 23. The makeup of the 23 has changed somewhat. But the actual 23 itself is very similar to what I thought earlier. It's not a personal pun, that's just to say. I think that some of these were quite straightforward selections and make a lot of sense. But Grant Williams starting next to Andre Pollard. I mean, I think Grant is our number 1 scrum off. I mean, I don't think that anybody is doubting that. And the fact is that he's now starting against Andre Pollard means that he's got a lot more license to not have to take on the game management part of it himself. I think that he is a player who really likes to play what's in front of him. I don't think that he really suits necessarily the game management well. And as the Boks, especially when Amani Liebach, for example, play, they often like to kick off 9. And now we're seeing them a lot more kicking off 10 and playing off 10. So I think he suits playing with Andre Pollard. Not so much from a attacking point of view, like being able to really get the back line going and throw the kind of passes you can see with Mani Liebach, for example, and having that quick ball. But it allows him more to play what's in front of him and let Pollard almost take on the responsibility of the game management aspect. So as a combination, they suit and they don't suit each other. It's an interesting one. They suit each other with regards to they kind of fill the gaps in each other's games. Pollard far more tactical than maybe Grant Williams is. Grant Williams probably more attacking, for example. And therefore, they tick a lot of different boxes. I think in wet conditions, we need that combination. And I think that, I had Morne van den Berg with Sasha, for example, and Grant with Pollard coming off the bench. We kind of seen the opposite of that. And Morne van den Berg was said to be involved, but for the injuries but for the actual result last week, that actually then changed their minds on what's going on. So it's very interesting to see that was been a call, and now they're basically saying they really want to get. I'll be interested to see if the plan was to maybe not play Grant Williams and maybe to have Morne van den Berg start and Kobus Reinach off the bench, and now they've kind of just done a straight swap with Morne van den Berg and Grant Williams himself. So lots to sort of pick apart with regards to the 9-10 combo, but I think it's a good combination. Your center combination, you cannot go wrong with the most experienced center partnership in Springbok history. You know, it's tried, it's tested. Damian de Allende is brutal, and we missed him last week. I think a different type of player to Andre Esterhuizen, but we did miss him. The wings were pretty straightforward. Willie Leroux always kind of has to start when you've got a Pollard, for example, because again, they, as a combination, they complement each other very well. He allows Andre Pollard, for example, to play his natural game without having to always consistently think about, for example, getting a backline going, because Willie Leroux will go into that first receiver role, and he'll do that kind of sort of attacking nature that we see, for example, in a Manie Libbok. And then you've got a Sash coming off the bench. And the nice thing is that with the way our bench looks, we're going to deploy it as a bomb squad, I'm pretty sure. We'll see, most in common about the 46th minute will be my guess. And you'll have all of them, Monis, Bowen, Wilco, Eben, Lurt, Kwacha, all on at the same time. What we will then decide is, if we are chasing the game, I think you'll see Sash come on at 10. If we're struggling, for example, and we still need a bit of X factor, then I think we'll see Sash come on at 10, and we kind of have to go for all-out attack. If we are seeing out the game, then what you can do is you can bring on a Sasha for a Billy, and you can bring in the X factor, or you can bring Sasha on for Damian de Allende, and you can keep Pollard on for that sort of solidity. So you've got options with how you sort of deploy the bench itself, and that is really, really good to see, because we've got more options, I think, than we had last weekend with regards to how we can kind of use our bench. And then Kobus Reinach is your number 9 option. So I think it ticks all the boxes we needed to tick. And I think that it's a good side. I think I see it. This is a side that can really dominate Australia in different sort of facets of the game. So let's see what everybody else has to say. So 83% people saying they like the team. Let's go see what some people had to say about it. K. saying it'll be slower game. Sorry, I'm just going to try and pick apart. There's lots of comments coming through, which is really, really cool. Also, before I even get to this, actually, very, very big thing to announce. We have got 2 tickets to give away to this weekend, and that is for our Forever Sports members, the players in our squad. The player 24 for Forever Sports, and those are our members. It's a small monthly subscription, which really helps us, enable us. For example, the Rassie Erasmus press conference is already on the channel, because we've got somebody down in Cape Town who's there on the ground, and that all happens because of you guys watching, because of our members and the likes of that. So to say a big thank you to our members, we are giving away 2 tickets to the game. If you would like to go into the draw, which is happening on Friday, the pinned comment is the link to join the members club. And if you do join the members club, you can then go into that draw, which we will draw on Friday for 2 fans to go to the game itself. Unfortunately, Wayne, it does not include travel arrangements. You have to get there. We can give you the tickets, but you have to get there. But if you are interested in that, then, I mean, your odds are better than any sort of other competition. You're looking at like 1 in 100, 1 in 200 odds of actually winning the tickets, whereas you go into other competitions and you're usually 1 of 1,000. So, yeah, if you'd like to do it, get involved with that. And yeah, as I said, I'm just going to try and pick out a few comments here and there. If you're desperate for your comment to be read out, then feel free to send a super chat, because then I can obviously see it a lot better and obviously we'll read it. But let's just go and find a few comments here and there and see what everybody has to say. Sia said, Willemse needs more game time at club level to get his confidence back, because he isn't playing like himself. Wouldn't be the worst idea for him to get a bit of Curry Cup time, actually. Just start in the number 15 jersey, just go and run out a bit. Kajul said, smartest move will be to sub Billy for Sasha after minute 1. Not sure they'll agree. Fonsal says, Steve, do you think Quan Horn will eventually replace Billy as a secondary playmaker, create a blank with Pollard in the squad? Look, I think Quine Horn is a tremendous player, and I think it's a matter of time before he becomes a permanent fixture in this box squad because he is so good and so talented. I do think that he's the natural kind of replacement, for Billy Leroux with regards to coming in and being that third fullback option. I do think that he is quite a bit of a playmaker. I think he's got a great left boot as well. Maybe not as X-factor-ish as your Damien Willems says in the uplated fasties, but he's got a good turn of pace. And he's actually deceptively fast. Kelly says, team very much as expected. Think Villy was necessary to calm things down among decision making. 100%. KR Gopher says, Moni is definitely the best front foot 10, but lacks game management. Polly would have been able to manage that Oz comeback. Dorian says both Morris and Byrne have over 50 club caps. Oh yeah, they're very experienced in a club sense of view. I mean, Morris van der Merwe playing over for Scarlets for a long time. Bowen Fenter's been a key fixture in Edinburgh and played really good rugby. So, they've played a lot of rugby. They're just not necessarily used to box setup and playing test match rugby. And sometimes it does take a bit longer, but also sometimes like a Dion Ferree, because you've played so much, you've played around the world. And I think what's important about those two is the around the world part. They've played in South Africa, they've played in Europe, and they've got that sort of different experience as well. So I think that makes it a lot easier to sort of go into test match rugby versus somebody like, well, to be fair, I think playing now with the URC, they get more exposure, but I do think that they're far more experienced, for example, than probably somebody like a Janindra Wessels, who's only ever played for the Bulls. He's only played 2 seasons where he's played majority of his games in the Highfield and has probably played, less than 10 games at Cape Town and Durban in the URC, for example, and has probably played maybe 20, 25 games in Europe. Bowen Fenter's played probably 100 games in Europe. Morris van der Merwe the same, as well as their 100, 200 games here. So they've played so much rugby around the world, different conditions, different situations, and they've been involved in different coaching structures. I think that's also quite important. You see players who kind of been around, they're exposed to different environments, can often adapt a lot better. Gerard van Tonda says, proper bomb squad with Eben, Lurt, and Kwacha. Wilco can anchor the bench scrum, and Sash Famigoma Zulu can change the game for the bench if it's needed. I agree. And Jacques saying, let's commit to 6-8 man lineouts instead of the 4-5 we did this past weekend. Stefan van der Space says, Creel was poor in defense last week, but so were many others. I think that Creel's in for a big game. I think when they give him the captaincy, I think he just takes everything up to a different level. Yassine says Polly won't be able to keep up with Williams. Leroux is there to manage the back line because Polly can kick a goal. Another comments over here. Matt Adams over here saying Rassie Erasmus backline is shaky. Pollard and Villy means they're going conservative, attacking through Villy. Pollard to kick and control the game. Well, that's the thing. They often do start together for that exact reason, and that's the nice thing. When you've got him on Liebach, for example, you don't have to. He provides your game, your attacking game plan. Your backline sort of create a role. Pollard, you don't necessarily get that, which is why you have to play a Villy Leroux. Whereas when you play Monty Liebach, for example, you can then play a Damien Willems or an Appelé Fassi because they don't have to necessarily fulfill that role. So it's all about combinations. I always talk about combinations. And for example, even in the second row, the combinations of an Arceus Neyman and a Ruan Nokia is a good combination. I think the combinations of Eben and Lute coming off the bench is a nice combination to have as well. So, yeah, I do think that obviously Pollard and Willems and Leroux being a combination, and Nemani and Willems during the World Cup being a good combination. So, yeah, I think it's a good call at the end of the day. So I'm going to go to some of the other comments. Byron says, or replying to something to Clayton, was saying he needs to play his socks off this weekend, needs to show he owns that 13 shirt and bring the experienced leadership. We need to smoke them. Talking about Jesse Creel. Jacques Kirsten saying, like Vic Matfield said, we played unbelievably well in the first quarter and then we tried to keep playing too much. Let's, once we are ahead, play more conservative and use our dominant forwards. Well, I'll tell you what, there's lots of forwards to use in this side over here. Seatley says, is Ethan Hooker ever going to get a game in TRC this year? Well, he was set to play. That's the information we've got coming out of the press conference, and is the fact that he was set to play. And then we lost. And then we had to rethink things, which is frustrating, I think. Even from yes, we lost. I would be interested to see where he was going to play. Was he set to play, for example, at outside centre or at inside centre? And now, I think Damien Delinde was always coming back. I'm just busy watching the highlights from last weekend and watching that first try. We played such good rugby. It's actually important that we need to go back and watch that first 20 minutes and just remind ourselves how good the rugby we did play was, because it was proper. That first try was so well organised. But I think the main thing is he will play again very soon, I think. I think we'll have him probably against Argentina and Durban will be my guess when he gets another opportunity. And Enrique Nelson says there was clear disconnect between our defense and attack. We didn't seem to have any plans for turnover ball. Yeah, I'm interested to see what our breakdowns look like this weekend, because in the starting lineup you've got a Malcolm Marx and Malcolm Verstappen. Their job will be the breakdown. Archie Neyman's not terrible at the breakdown either. Jean-Luc Dupree needs to try and get involved there. But the nice thing is you've got a proper fetcher in Marnus van der Merwe coming on, which you didn't really have in a Bongi Manambi. He's just not a fetcher, which Marnus van der Merwe is. Kwagga Smith is a fetcher. So you've got two players coming on. You can jackal, get over the ball. We really miss Steven Kitsoff. That was the thing. When we had Steven Kitsoff, we had Malcolm Marx, you had a Dwayne Vermeulen, for example, or starting. You had three fetchers starting. And then you brought on a Kwagga Smith, for example, who was also a fetcher. We used to bring on, before that, we had a Francois Lowe. We had Dion Ferry, and we had all these different fetchers to sort of win those crucial penalties. And I think we've sort of we've lacked that a little bit in the last few games. So having Marnus van der Merwe, I think, for me, really excites me, because they're a really good player over the ball. And Gerard says average test caps for the match day 23 was 46.7 with average age 30.3. Well, the average caps in this match day 23 is as follows. I can tell you exactly what they are. The average caps on the bench is 41. The average caps in the forwards is 40, and the average caps in the backline are 61. So how's that for plenty of experience? And I think we're gonna need all of that experience as well. If we then look at some other stats, by the way, let's have a couple of stats. It'll be the first time they meet in Cape Town since 2014, where we beat them 28 points to 10. The Boks have won 7 of their last 8 matches against the Wallabies in Cape Town since 1992. To be fair, we had a 60-odd year winning streak at Ellis Park. Some individual stuff. Evan Etzebeth will extend his record to 135 caps. 100 Pollard needs 3 points to get to 800 points in tests. And Damien Delinde will move 10th into the place of most caps Springboks with 90 tests. He is currently tied in 89 with Peter Steph de Toy and the late Joost van der Westhuizen. Oxenchair will serve as the Springbok vice captain for the first time in his career. How's that for? I actually missed that when I looked at the team announcement earlier. That's cool. Shout out. My boy Rateka Vaditswe. And Triton says, why don't we blood our young players against their young players? Well, we do have, very common, which young players are you referring to? Are you referring to like an Ethan Hooker, for example? Because young or inexperienced? Because, for example, new players, but Marnus van der Merwe falls into that category. Bowen Venter falls into that category. Sasha falls into that category. Caden's still 22 years old. Ruan Okia is one of the younger players as well. So there is new players over here. So there's no Ethan Hooker necessarily or Morne van den Berg. I'm trying to think of anybody else who would be the big. Asanate and Klabakanya had a go last week. I don't think there's that many young players of the squad that are in the squad that have been left out. I do think we have changed a reasonable amount. And how many changes did we make to the team? Let's see over here. 10 changes to the starting 15. You can't argue that we're not rotating and giving people a go. We made 10 changes to the starting lineup. So I think overall there's very little in the squad I can pick and say I don't like, which is probably the biggest thing and probably the biggest good thing is the fact that majority of this makes all the sense in the world. And as long as it makes all the sense in the world, we can kind of get behind Rassie Erasmus and the lads, because it's a team that makes sense. It's when we start seeing teams that we're not sure of, and then they don't perform, and then we start thinking that we know better. This team is not that. This team is a team that's been selected with a couple of tweaks to go out and absolutely hammer them. And I think we will. I think we will respond. I think we have to respond really well. So, I do think it's going to be a long game. But I do think if we can get in the front foot, I think that there's places where we can have a go. I also think that Australia have also got a few lineouts, a couple of key players. Dylan Peach, not looking good. Doesn't look like they're going to have Harry Wilson, for example, involved. So those are two at least. So they said that there are a couple of injuries in that Australia side. So it'll be interesting to sort of see what their side looks like when it's announced on Thursday. Ayabonga says, glad to see Delende back in the starting, arguably been our best player in the midfield. Jesse Creel has been great for us, but I do think he might have needed a rest for this game. And Jacques saying, if we lose this game, it's very bad. It might be the start of a fall off. And Menzi not happy that Billeroo is back in the starting lineup. Although ironically, when we did a prediction yesterday, and everybody built the squad, and you guys all sort of voted on who's going to be in each position, we actually had Willie LaRue as our fullback. So I think people also, it's easy to, when you're winning, for example, and things are going well, it's easy to say that we need to get rid of these sort of players. We then see a game on Saturday where we probably lacked some experience and we probably lacked a bit of a calm head. And then all of a sudden people start thinking, well, maybe actually your Willie LaRue's still offer a lot to the mix. And maybe that's when we need to actually look at, well, we actually got to bring them back in and understand what the value is of the experience. Because that's the problem. We talk about having young players, but then when things start going badly, have they got the experience to be able to cope with what Australia were throwing at them? And the answer is we obviously just didn't. We just didn't find a way of being able to cope and being able to respond to what they did. So it's going to be interesting to see. If anybody asking Fife de Klerk, he's not in the squad. He was left out. They were looking at other options. So there's no injuries or anything like that. He was purely just left out. If you're asking, that's why. Why he's been left out, or if they don't back him, then that's a whole different conversation to have. But it's not a fitness issue or anything. He is available. He just wasn't in the squad. Evan Moist said, very excited for Jean-Luc Dupre and Marnus van der Merwe to start doing something, start making the spot theirs. Yeah, I think Marnus van der Merwe is my most excited pick. I'm a big stan. I'm a massive fan of Marnus van der Merwe. I think he's got everything he needs to be a top Springbok. I think he's got the soft skills. He's got the lineouts. His lineouts are generally pretty good. He's really good in open play. Such a good jackler. He's still pretty physical. So I think he's a really exciting prospect. Very interesting news is that there's apparently a little bit of a race for his signature with the Stormers involved, the Lions involved, the Sharks involved as well, a couple of Prem sides involved. I think we'll see Marnus van der Merwe back in the country in the next year or two, because if he wants to go to the World Cup, he needs to be playing week in, week out in front of Rassie Erasmus. And whilst he will be monitored whilst playing for the Scarlets, it's not the same as playing for like a Lions week in, week out. And I tell you what, the Lions should be all over that. I mean, the Sharks, how many hookers do you need? Even the Stormers, how many hookers do you need? The Lions, cheap as that as a position, we need a hooker. If Marnus van der Merwe came back to South Africa and went to the Lions, it would be one of the best signings we've made post-COVID. And we've bought him about Klikani, he's a good signing, but yeah, he would be a huge signing. If he were to come back to South Africa and join the Lions, his comeback here. Clayton says, all Marnus needs to do to get my vote is have success in the lineouts. Anton says, now we need Cameron Hanekom to come to the squad. Yeah, we are missing quite a few players with injury. People talking about the curse of the number 8 jersey. Cameron Hanekom injured. Joano Augustus injured. Jasper Wiese banned. Sia Khaleesi now injured. Somebody else. No, come to me. Contender says Pollard is a general at 10 with his control, composure, and physicality. If we wanted to play hands, you put him at 12, where he's less under pressure and supports Sasha at 10. Stormer says good pick at 8, should have brought in hooker. Johnny Pillay says, why is Monica van den Berg not in the squad? Because we lost last weekend. That is the long and short answer, really. He was set to play. Rassie Erasmus mentioned that he wanted to play him, but after the result last week, they decided not to do that. Oh, I still would have done that. I think it would have been a good a player for the World Cup. For the World Cup, so obviously seeing there's a press release come from the Women's World Cup, which we will be covering, by the way. We unfortunately won't be able to do a watch along this weekend. But we will be covering the Women's World Cup throughout the tournament, and I think they're going to go far, by the way. I've got a sneaky suspicion we might see a little quarterfinal, semi-final within the women, which will be so much fun. Mark says, Quagga gives away a lot of stupid penalties. He owes the fans a big performance. He's a jackler. He's at the breakdown. They always, players who are jacklers are always your highest penalty conceders. Dion Ferry, Francois Lowe, even back in the day, like a Henry Brousseau, for example, eventually, they're always your most penalized players because they're always on the edge. If you never ever go into a breakdown, for example, you never go for a steal, you're never gonna get penalized. But because he has to live on the edge, where he has to try and get involved, and it's a very difficult thing to get right, because they've now got so many laws. If you're not supporting your body weight, it's a penalty. If your hands are beyond the ball as you go for it, it's a penalty. So you're now playing at the absolute speed of light. If you don't get your hands on that ball and literally only the ball and support your body weight and get it up quickly, you get penalized. So it's arguably probably one of the hardest skills to do actually in the modern rugby law. So yeah, I mean he does give away a few penalties, but Rassie spoke about the fact they said he felt that he was unlucky with some of the penalties, and I think that's a bit of a not a jab, but a bit of a kind of a note towards the referees to basically say that. And they probably would have asked for clarity regarding some of the turnovers and the likes of that, because it is so close to the edge. And they're going to want to make sure that they understand what they're looking for, so that Marnus, Quagga, Malcolm are all on the same page when they go for that jackal, when they go for that turnover. Who's the ref for the weekend? It's actually a ref I haven't seen a lot for. It's New Zealander. I'll tell you now, because I was checking all the match official appointments for the weekend, and I haven't really seen much of him. So it's James Dolman from New Zealand, and I'm trying to work out if he's ref the box before. He's assisted by Andrew Brace and Jean-Luca Grecci from FIR. The TMO is Richard Kelly from New Zealand, and the split screen / pro is Tuel Tranini from France. James Dolman is 34 years old. Let's find out a bit more about James Dolman, shall we? As I said, I just saw it before I came on here. He 2019 refereed the final of the 2019 World Cup Rugby Under 20 Championship. It doesn't say when he had his first test. I don't think he's ever refed us before, to be honest. And it wasn't part of the Sanzon newsletter. So yeah, I'm a little bit in the dark, I must admit, about him. But we'll do a bit more research and find out what he's like. Well, I suppose we'll find out exactly what he's like on Saturday, but we'll kind of do a bit more research and understand his background before this weekend. Martin says, you South Africans, no need to panic. It was the 1 in 100 event. It happens. I know. I'm a long-suffering African Wallabies fan of 43 years. You'll probably win in Cape Town. Hope so. Kumquat says, Quan Horn literally has all the potential to be the Billy clone. I hope so. Just needs to get that opportunity, doesn't he? I do think that he can do a job. And I think that he's going to play many, many games for the box. So people talking about some of the referee decisions, the forward passes, for example, the collapsing the scrums and the likes of that. It's always interesting going into match day 2, because now what would have happened in the first week is you would have done a review and you would have checked all the different incidents, everything that was penalized, for example, and you now sort of will send that to World Rugby or to Sanzon and say, we need clarity on what's happening here. So, now the referee, for example, will have that in the back of their mind, and they'll have that feedback going into this weekend. So hopefully we'll have more clarity over what was going wrong, and we can then maybe sort of fix a few things and maybe paint a better picture. That's always the big thing, whenever you listen to Jakob Paper, he said it's about giving them pictures. It's not about necessarily doing everything as you should do. It's a case of how do you present the right picture. And it's about making sure that if you are getting scrum dominance, you got to show the referee that you're getting scrum dominance, that you're going straight, for example. You got to paint the right picture. And there are different signs that refs will look when you're doing that. And you've got to try and find ways of being able to show that you've dominated or that you've got the breakdown legally and paint the right picture for the referee to then reward you. It's a difficult thing to get right, but that is the reality, to be honest. Kate Senecal says James Dolman has only ref boxed once in 2022 in a 36-20 win versus Argentina. Well, there we go. So he has refed us once, but you can see why I don't remember him. 36-20 versus Argentina. Was that down in Durban? Was that the one where we had to smash them in Durban to... no, that was... Could have been in Argentina. Pretty sure that was the year where we had to like beat them quite convincingly to be able to win the rugby championship, and then we just didn't get we had to beat them like 40 points or something like that. The game doesn't ring a bell. I won't lie. Luke says I'm hoping to see more scrums and driving mauls, and Antti says Este is unlucky. He made every international pick in their teams of the week. Yeah, but at the end of the day, he's been replaced by arguably South Africa's best inside centre everywhere. You know, that's Damien Delindi. You know, you kind of run out of superlatives when it comes to describing the type of player he is and what he's done for the Boks and the kind of consistent level of performance he brings. So it's not so much what Andre Esterhuizen did well. Andre Esterhuizen is just guilty of a massive, massive problem, and that's playing in the same era as Damien Delindi. He probably would have played 60-odd caps if he had been in a different era. But he's now with one of the best inside centers of all time. And as a result, he hasn't had as much chances as that he probably would have had in a different lifetime. People are going to start wrapping up. Barry says, does he blow scrum penalties? We need to bring the clunk and scoop. Matthew says, good team depth, building side named. And earlier, Ricky was saying, I think we are going to play a very direct. Well, I think so as well. I think we're going to have to, you know, somebody said, the whole F them up physically is very much going to be probably part of the plan for this week. And to just try and absolutely hammer them away and away and away and away. So it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of go about things. I think players who I'm really looking forward to seeing trying to step up and hopefully showing us the value they still bring. Somebody like a Franco Mostert, for example, I think it's a big test for him. Big opportunity this for Jean-Luc Dupré. I think you've got somebody like off the bench. I'm interested to sort of see how Lua Diago goes. You know, I want to see how Bern Fenter continues to go. Martin Mervis got a massive opportunity. I think if Martin van der Merwe plays well, I would have no issue whatsoever in picking him for that All Black game. You know, that's kind of where I'm at with him. And I think that he probably knows this as well, that Bongi hasn't maybe been ramming down the door with performances recently. And as a result, he's got an opportunity to sort of put himself in that mix. But, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to sort of see how it'll all sort of play out, and I'm excited from a Bok fan point of view in terms of how we respond, you know, at the end of the day, and it's about finding that the way to respond to show the fans that a lot of these players still have it. You know, and still are playing at the level that we wanted to play on. So there's a certain amount of soul searching, I think, which had to happen this past week. And now I've got to go out and show everybody that a lot of these players can still play at the level, that they can still contribute. And I expect a lot of them to respond very positively. People, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. As mentioned, the Rassie Erasmus press conference is on the channel. So go and watch that. He's given a good update on why he picked the players he did and kind of what the idea is. So once you leave this and once you smash like on the video, go and check that out.